Hello and welcome to the fourth CTIS Walking Clinic of 2025. My name is Teresa Calandri and I'm a Project Assistant Analyst at the EMA. This is the agenda for today with indicative time slots as the duration of the Q&A session will depend on the number of questions received in Slido. Let me start with some housekeeping rules. Questions have been collected via Slido until 12th of November using the code #clinic252. If the video screen is blurry or difficult to see, please read the instructions in the yellow box underneath the live broadcast section on the event page. There you can find a link to watch the live broadcast on full screen. Please make sure you have a stable internet connection. For more information on CTIS, you can consult various resources, some of them listed on this slide. The Clinical Trials Highlights newsletter, the CTIS Training and Support page, and for guidance on CTR interpretation, you can consult UDRLEX Volume 10. The CTIS Training Environment Survey is opened. On the slide, you have the link to address and the QR code of the survey. This survey collects expression of interest in accessing the CTIS training environments. All details will serve to proactively identify the needs and intentions of use of CTIS and grant access accordingly. I would like now to introduce our experts of today. We had Frederick Heckman, Approval Officer at the Ethics Committee Westfalen Lib in Germany, Jan-Willem Kleinofink, Special Advisor at the Central Committee on Research Involving Human Subjects CCMO in the Netherlands, Marie Yvonne Hansen, Scientific Advisor at the Danish National Center for Ethics. We also have Victor Kojokaru, Scientific Officer at the EMA, and Karalampos Drossos, also Babis, CTIS Business Process Officer at the EMA. The Q&A session will start now. Let's start with the first question of the day, which is, when will there be a downloadable list in CTIS that shows the approved documents, including the correct version, number, and the correct date? Babis?
Hello to everybody. Teresa, can you hear me? Because I was having an issue with an application before.
Yes, we can hear you properly.
Thank you very much. Okay, perfect. So thank you very much for the first question. This feature is a part of the download functionality. We have most of the attendees must have heard about the modernization roadmap, like a large initiative that regards big changes in CTIS. And one of the work streams is dedicated to the download functionality. So this feature, the list about the approved documents, is a part of the download functionality of this work stream. We do not have particular timelines for the release of this feature, but we hope that many features of this revamped download functionality will be released incrementally during the 2026.
Thank you, Babis. I'm going to go with the next question. When the last EU country reaches end of trial, which is also global end of trial, the same date cannot be used for EU and global. ServiceNow advises a user to enter an incorrect end of trial date and add a clarifying document. This doesn't make sense. Is it a deviation for the sponsor? Will this be fixed, Babis?
Yes, thank you, Teresa. Yes, we're aware of those issues. We have been receiving incidents from many users. We have an improvement on our backlog plan. We discuss when in which release we need to include this deployment. I'm sure that it's not scheduled for the 2025. And I think it will be included in one of the releases of the upcoming year, since it affects a lot of users indeed.
Thank you. Give me 1 second, and I'll continue with the next one. The welcome 81.9 non-substantial modification increased flexibility occurred on 6th of November after end of the CTIS maintenance window at 7. Prior communication was Q4 2024 and then Q3 2025, end of October 25 for implementation. Precise dates for CTIS changes are critical to avoid mistakes. Future CTIS changes need exact dates. Papis?
Yeah. I think, if I'm not wrong now, that back in 2024, of course, there was communication about the roadmap, and like in this communication, we have been mentioning the different topics that will be included in the roadmap. Now this document, like roadmap, is like a living document. So like the listed topics are planned by quarter. It is possible during the discussions that we have with the stakeholders that like those topics are shifted based on their priority. And I'm sure, like for example, that for this quarter, let's say this period, we discuss about the plan of the upcoming quarter. So I do not think that we had associated the increased non-SM flexibility with the date of 2024. It was too early. Most probably it was like the period that we have been describing the roadmap in total, like in overall.
Thank you. We'll continue now with the order. So we have the next question. How should a sponsor handle CTIS site listing when trial activities occur at different places under one principal investigator? For example, adolescent adult trials in different departments of the same hospital. Should this be listed in CTIS as one site if the organization ID or loc ID match, or two sites? What if the loc IDs is different? Frederick?
Yes, to answer this question, that depends on national regulations for the moment, but we highly recommend to clarify this somewhere, like in the cover letter or in the site list or somehow, that it otherwise it can give the impression that it is a mistake. Please note that the requirements of the CTR regarding investigator and trial sites must be complied.
Thank you. Next question. You confirmed that relabeling and secondary packaging of an authorized product are not considered modifications as they don't affect quality, but member states raise RFIs asking to indicate the product as authorized modified. Can you indicate where the above is stated so that RFIs can be properly answered? Jan Willem?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. You confirmed, I think this refers to a recent update to the AXMP recommendation paper that's on EuroLex Volume 10, where exactly this point was added. So what is and what is not considered a modification. And indeed, we also acknowledge this is not in line with what the member states so far, at least some of the member states, and that includes the Netherlands, have asked for in validation. So we are currently aligning our procedures with this principle, where only a change to the primary packaging is considered a modification of the product itself, and relabeling and a change of secondary packaging is not. So this is acknowledged and will be aligned. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question. In the recent CTCG Complex Clinical Trial Q&A 1.1, the master protocol is provided with each new sub-protocol application submission for information only, wherein CTIS is the sponsor to upload the for information only master protocol. If in the protocol section, would this be public? Jan Willem?
Yes, indeed. So a number of questions on this recent publication by CTCG. just to clarify, generally, there was an existing guidance on complex clinical trials, which is focused on how to set up such kind of trial. The new document on CTCG website, which these 3 questions are about, is on the practical aspects of how to submit these kind of trials in CTIS. Just so you know the different purposes of these 2 documents. And this point is correct. The master protocol is to be submitted also in the sub-protocol applications, but that is the last authorized version of the master protocol. So not any new amendments, for instance, to the master protocol. Those only go in the master protocol application. But if this is indeed the case, the master protocol is submitted in the sub-protocol application. This is done indeed in the protocol section of the sub-protocol application, and therefore subject to any of the default publication rules. So if necessary, you may need to make a redacted version. But that is exactly the same principle as in the master protocol application itself. So the same principles apply. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next one. Contact point for the union. Can the email be a mailbox instead of personal email? For example, to ensure that no emails are lost in case of sick leaves or holidays. Victor?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. The short answer is yes. And as mentioned in the CTIS sponsor handbook, any contact detail inserted in CTIS should be a functional contact detail and not containing personal data. And it is purely up to the sponsor whether these functional contact details are associated with the person or with the team. Thank you.
Thank you. Next one. Notices and alerts via email, how this will be organized. An employer from a company will receive all notices and alerts for all the clinical trials of the company, or just the contract of the clinical trial will receive the notices via email applicable to that trial. Babis?
Yes. So like any user that receives notices and alerts in CTIS based on his or her roles assigned to his or her profile will need to opt out or opt in from receiving email notifications for any incoming notice and alert. Now, this is like an all or nothing selection. Now, of course, by opting in, each user can set up like Outlook rules in their inbox, and they can manage those incoming notifications appropriately.
Thank you. Next one. Some conditional approvals on initial applications take months to resolve before the recruitment can begin. Can this time be accounted for in CTIS? So a full 2 years is provided in member states to recruit a participant before a substantial modification to extend recruitment beyond 2 years is required. Victor?
Yes, so as CTR lays the principles, the first visit of the first subject in a particular member state must take place within 2 years from the date the initial application is authorized or authorized with condition in that member state. The subsequent start recruitment notification needs to be submitted within 2 years plus 15 additional days. Failure to notify the start recruitment within this timeline will change the trial authorization status in that member state to expired. Now, if there are any particular circumstances in which the sponsor cannot fulfill the start of recruitment requirement within the 2-year timeframe, the sponsor may request an extension beyond the 2-year deadline by submitting a substantial modification part 1 and 2 or substantial modification part 2 only, which will be subject to assessment and approval by the member state. But a general extension in CTIS to accommodate for this particular situation would need to be subject to assessment always. Thank you.
Thank you. Next one. For CTCG Complex Clinical Trial Q&A 1.1, modifications of the master protocol can only be submitted via substantial modification of the specific EUCT application of the authorized master protocol. How would the sponsor proceed with the new sub-study in a second EUCT number if the master protocol needs new changes for the new sub-study? Jan-Willem?
Yeah, so this question and the third one later on are quite similar, or at least the answer is quite similar. Let me start by emphasizing the general concept of a complex clinical trial is that the master protocol is restricted to describing the general framework, giving the flexibility to submit sub-protocols without requiring any changes to the master protocol. So in general, I hope it doesn't happen often that the master protocol itself needs any changes, at least not because a new sub-protocol is launched. Of course, it can always happen that changes are needed to the master protocol, and this can overlap in time also with an ongoing or an expected application of a sub-protocol. That can happen. It's a very specific situation. I can imagine it's practical to have those applications at the same time. You need to know what the modified master protocol will be in order to assess the new sub-protocol. But I advise in this case to contact the RMS of the trial in advance for advice on that specific situation. Thank you.
Thank you. Next one. With increased flexibility on the Article 81.9 NSM, is there any timeframe by which 81.9 NSM should be submitted by the sponsor in CTIS? Currently, any application blocks all 81.9 NSM submission. Are sponsors free to implement some 81.9 NSM changes and submit the 81.9 NSM in CTIS after? Jan-Willem?
Yeah, so that last question, yes, that counts for any non-substantial modification, whether it classifies under CTR Article 81.9 or not. You can always implement them immediately and do not need to wait for submission in CTIS. For the 81.9 changes, they need to be submitted as soon as you can. For the other non-substantial modifications, you wait until the next substantial modification on the same part of the dossier. And not before, so also not with an SM on the other part, and also not with an 81.9 application. So that is the principles. The non-SM application type in CTIS is only for Article 81.9 and nothing else. Then the first part of the question, indeed, there is now, and that's a good thing, more flexibility on what can be submitted with this application type, in part one especially. But the principle is still the same, that this application type cannot overlap with any other. So that restriction is still there. So as I mentioned, you submit these kind of changes as soon as you can, but the restrictions currently still apply. So in some cases, you need to wait until an SM application, for instance, is finished. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question. Submitting unexpected events, serious breaches, USM, and third country inspection notifications is possible for a trial that is ended, but not for a trial that is on temporary halt in the EU. This is illogical. It is more common to have this for an active trial than for a closed one. When this will be fixed, we know the workaround. Babis?
Yes, thank you, Teresa. Yes, indeed, it's a known issue. We have been receiving also for this matter a lot of incidents in service desk, and I see that the person who raised the question is aware of the workaround. We have an improvement regarding this on the backlog. I do not have a deployment date for that. For sure, it's not scheduled for this quarter that we are in the middle of it. And currently we are discussing about the upcoming quarter Q1, and most possibly it won't be on this quarter either. We hope that since it affects a lot of users, we will be having that released in the next year. For the moment, please, I understand that the workaround might be causing some inconvenience to users, but for the moment, please use that.
Okay, thank you, Babis. Next one. For CTCG Complex Clinical Trial Q&A 1.1, modifications of the master protocol can only be submitted via substantial modification of the specific EUCT application of the authorized master protocol. how would the sponsor proceed with the new sub-study in a second EUCT number if RFIs are received to change the master protocol? Would a substantial modification in the first EUCT number be needed? Jan-Willem?
Yeah, so as before, I don't expect that this will happen so much. In principle, a new sub-study should not lead to changes in the master protocol. And I also don't expect that assessors will ask for these kinds of changes. But if they are needed, the basic principle applies. An amendment to the master protocol is submitted and assessed only in the master protocol application, and changes to the sub-protocol only in the sub-protocol application. And if this results in a tricky practical situation, I advise to contact the RMS for guidance. Thanks.
Thank you. Will there be efforts to streamline RFI management especially regarding automatic technical RFIs as payment invoices in Czech Republic and updates to Part 2 documents after Part 1 RFIs? The current process often delays responses due to misalignments. How can we reduce unnecessary RFIs? Frederick?
Yes, there's no solution for the second part of the question for the moment because timelines for Part 1 and Part 2 differs. The problem or the case is that if you have to submit the conclusion for Part 2 in the moment, the RFI for Part 1 has to be submitted. There is no solution for that. For the RFIs in validation, it's not clear what it's meant in this question by automatic technical RFIs because we recommend to always refer to the current guidelines and Q&A documents, especially for national recommendations or requirements, to ensure to ensure that the application is submitted in full.
Thank you. Next one, sponsor activity and CTIS access. How long should sponsors remain active in CTIS after the end of trial and results submission, given an ad hoc RFIs can be received once study access is revoked? Is there guidance on keeping minimal access, for example, sponsor admin, to receive and respond to RFIs? Jan-Willem?
Yeah, so I'm not aware of any guidance on this specific topic. There's a few things that might happen after the end of trial and after the results are submitted. The very last thing is the submission of the clinical study report, if that is applicable, if it's used for the market authorization request. But that can happen after a very long time, of course. And in the meantime, there might be ad hoc assessments where RFIs are sent. I guess this, if it happens, it would be because of new safety signals that are identified. But as I understood from safety assessors, this is not very likely to happen. If this is an IMP-related safety signal, it wouldn't likely be linked to any trials that had already ended, but only to the trials that are still ongoing. So in principle, at the very basic level, access needs to be maintained. But I can imagine that access has been distributed across multiple parties, multiple involved people, and that could be restricted as long as there is a basic long-term monitoring by the sponsor. Thank you.
Thank you. Next one. Some RFIs and conditions state interim results are to be submitted and approved in a substantial modification before a trial can progress. For example, from dose ranging to efficacy treatments. Yet the interim results are submitted in CTIS under the trial results tab and not in an application. Is the interim result submission in the trial results tab sufficient? Frederick?
Yeah, there's a short answer because if the condition clearly points out that you have to submit the results as a substantial modification, you have to submit the results as a substantial modification and not elsewhere. So it's not sufficient to submit the results elsewhere. You have to submit it as a substantial modification.
Thank you. Next one. The requirement for ASM with specific structured data to be approved to extend recruitment beyond 2 years is challenging to meet. CTIS sends incorrect notices, over 400 in 3 months, and adds 15 days to the true deadline for SM approval. Is any other method, Article 81.9 non-substantial modification, to extend in CTIS? Victor?
This is very much linked to the previous question that I addressed. So, as already mentioned there, the extension of the initial 2-year period for starting the recruitment in a particular member state concerned is subject to assessment and approval by the member state concerned, and therefore it cannot be done other way than through a substantial modification. Thank you.
Thank you. Next one. Sometimes an RMS fails to submit a Part 1 conclusion or RFI at day 45, day 38 of substantial modification of the assessment, and the trial must be resubmitted. Would the EMA consider CTIS enhancement where Part 1 dummy RFI is issued automatically at the end of day 45, day 38 to prevent no conclusion of Part 1? Papis?
Yes, no such feature is expected to be released. I like to automatically extend like the due date for the RFI submission or for the Part 1 conclusion. If for any reason the Part 1 conclusion expires and the resubmission is needed, the sponsors will need like to follow the instructions from the authorities. Of course, like we are aware of such cases, and I have experienced that like sometimes the sponsors might incorporate feedback from the authorities in their new draft to submit a more complete dossier and probably like having more chances to receive less RFIs. And with that case, with that process, it's quite possible that they might have the assessment in a somewhat expedited way.
Thank you. Next one. NSM functionality now extends to additional sections, but submission rules are still stricter than for SM. NSM cannot be submitted during any ongoing assessments. Will this be improved? When? Babis?
This is like a big topic. There are ongoing discussions for the submission rules, and representatives from the sponsor side contribute to those discussions, and they actively participate. What I can say for the moment is that please stay tuned. As soon as we have like a final agreement on the submissions rules, all the information will be disseminated through the known channels like newsletter, release notes for the new CTIS releases, etc. For the moment, I do not have like something else to share.
Thank you. Next one. Some participants become incapacitated after enrollment, so the informed consent form includes language for a legally authorized representative to reconsent, even though the including or excluding criteria forbid enrolling incapacitated participants. How can sponsors avoid RFI seeking removal of the legally authorized representative language in the informed consent form? Mari?
Yes, I want to start by saying that this sounds a little bit like a complex ethical and legal situation, so the concrete answer will depend on the concrete trial at hand. But very strictly speaking, it would be so that either it would be a clinical trial including incapacitated participants, and then the rules for such trials must be complied with, that is CTR Article 31. Or if the inclusion and exclusion criteria state really clearly that only persons capable of giving informed consent can participate, then incapacitated persons must be withdrawn from the trial. Our advice is that sponsor makes sure to explain and justify the situation around this reconsent of legally designated representatives properly in the trial documentation to allow for assessment of the ethics committees. And this is both in the protocol regarding the scientific requirements and the ethical justification, and in the recruitment arrangements document under part 2. And if it is a situation where, for instance, the capacity of participants could be fluctuating, for instance, if it's a person suffering from dementia or certain psychiatric disorders, this should also be described. And just also to note that the legally designated representative, as described in the CTR, this is under national law, regulated by national law in member states, such as described in CTR Article 2. And in Denmark, for instance, this depends, for instance, whether a person is under legal guardianship or not. And here it would also be, in Denmark, it would be required that it's specified who are these legally designated representatives, who can they be, and the participant information sheets and informed consent form should reflect the situation of the concrete trial in Denmark correctly. If it's next of kin, for instance, and an independent physician, who are the legally designated representatives, or if it's a guardian.
Thank you. Next one. How can satellite sites where certain trial activities, for example chemotherapy, takes place, be represented or linked to the main site in CTIS? Frederick?
Yeah, actually, there is no possibility to link the satellite center to or trial site to the main site. For include this in CTIS, you have to enter it as a site by itself.
Thank you. Next one. Will there be a possibility to use click to go back to a previous screen in CTIS in the future? This will reduce time spent in the portal. Babis?
I think we do not have in our plans an improvement for that, for such a feature in the near future at least.
Thank you. Next one. Due to AXMP shortage in the EU, sponsor will import AXMP, same active substance, from the US. The US AXMP will be used in accordance with its USPI and protocol. Should this be considered as unauthorized AXMP and registered in CTIS, plus quality documents submitted, or authorized and not registered in CTIS? Victor?
Yeah, so this particular situation has been clarified in the latest update of the AXMP guideline, and it is stated there that unauthorized AXMPs refer to medicinal products that do not hold a valid marketing authorization in the EU EEA. Therefore, this includes also products that hold a marketing authorization outside the EU EEA, even if they have the same brand names as the ones applied in the EU EEA marketing authorization. Therefore, they need to be, this type of AXMPs need to be registered in CTIS, and there are specific steps that are described in the CTIS Sponsor Handbook, section 2.4.5. Thank you.
Thank you. Next one. If an approved study in CTIS enrolls no participants in the EU EEA, but completes with participants globally, are translations of the lay and summary results still needed for all the EU countries where the trial was authorized? Or would an English summary, lay summary be sufficient? Jan Willem?
Yeah, I understand the question, but the summary, the lay summary especially, is not one-on-one linked to the participants of the trial. I also refer to the recommendation paper on Eurolex Volume 10 on the lay summary. This is a 2018 paper, but the principles still apply. It states that the general audience of the lay summary is not just the participant, but the general audience. And that can include any patient, so in the EU in this case, suffering from the medical condition that was investigated, and their friends and relatives and caretakers and patient organizations. So the scope and the purpose of the lay summary is much broader than just the trial participants, which is why also in this case where nobody was enrolled in the EU, still the same requirements apply for submitting lay summary, and also the language requirements. Thank you.
Thank you. Next one. Where the subject is unable to write, consent may be given and recorded through appropriate alternative means in the presence of at least one impartial witness. CTR is recording mandatory or optional? Can witness signature count as recording? Marie?
Yes, just to start with a little bit of a general disclaimer, it's important just to distinguish between the provisions related to persons who are unable to write and persons who are incapacitated and not able to give informed consent, so that you do not confuse this impartial witness with the legally designated representative. But as mentioned in the text that is cited in the question, we are talking about a person who is fully capable of giving informed consent but simply cannot write. And in this term, as it mentioned, the consent can be recorded by different means, and this could, for instance, be by a fingerprint or an X as appropriate. And there must be no confusion about the legal status of the consent, that this person has really consented to the trial. It's not substituted by the signature of the partial witness, the impartial witness. The impartial witness signature is for such things as, for instance, that they attest the time and date of the signature, the identity of the participant, and that this person was really capable of giving informed consent at the time. Please note, however, there could be difference between member states regarding this topic. The process should be described in this document on recruitment arrangements in informed consent under Part 2, and there are also some questions printed in the template on UDOLEX 10 that are recommended to be answered if you want to include this process in your clinical trial. And just a recommendation, it would also be recommended to document the situation and the reasoning for this choice of the means of recording the informed consent at the trial site. Thank you.
Thank you. Next one. Can a study for which the end of trial was notified for a MSc be reopened? For example, if a protocol amendment extending recruitment is planned, how can this be technically done? By withdrawal of notification? Babis?
In the current version, this is not possible. If we try to simulate this scenario, this case in the current system, the sponsor indeed might follow a workaround, like the one that is mentioned here, like to withdraw the notification. By withdrawing the notification, the status of the trial in the member state becomes again authorized, and the user then will be allowed to submit substantial modification or non-SM to submit those changes for the protocol. But of course, please, before you take such an action, always check this workaround with the RMS. And if you have their confirmation, please go ahead.
Thank you. Next one. Is investigator signature needed for clinical study report? From which principal investigator? Is a single study level coordinating investigator signature sufficient? Jan Willem?
Yeah, so is a signature needed? That depends on when, but this is a CTIS meeting. So when you submit a clinical study report in CTIS, the answer is no. That is because of the general principle in CTIS and in the CTR that the submission of personal data should be minimized. So in CTIS applications, there's only the QP declaration and site suitability forms where signature is required. And in all other documents, it includes the protocol cover letter. It is advised to submit a version that is unsigned, no signature. Member states, especially in their Part 2 packages, might have some additional requirements for signatures. But what I just mentioned is the principle. Then later on, if you use the clinical study report for your market authorization request, then the requirements are different. I think it needs to be signed, but for that is out of scope of the CTR and CTIS. But you can refer to ICH E3, if I'm correct, on this topic that describes also the requirements for the signature. Thank you.
Thank you. Next one. CTIS requires site details for third country inspections, and new sites may need to be created if not in OMS. Include investigator name and email in the requested section. Can EMA clarify how this investigator identifies align with CTIS data minimization? Is sponsor contact acceptable instead? Babis?
Yes, Teresa. I mean, for this question, we were not like pretty sure about the meaning, so I will provide an answer, but based on some assumptions, taking the risks that I might have misunderstood the question. I think that the question here refers to the notification of the third country inspectorate inspection. So when you created such a notification, you have also like a pop-up form in which you can locally register the organization in CTIS. And in this form, among other fields, you have also fields for the email and for the telephone number. Now, if the user happens not to have like the functional contact details for this organization, they could possibly like fill, at least system-wise, they could possibly fill theirs or like some dummy details. I have the feeling that those contact details are not subjected to assessment by the authorities. But if it happens and during the assessment, the authorities raise questions through an ad hoc RFI, it's very, very easy for the sponsor user to update those details. It's just a few clicks in case that happens.
Thank you. Next one. If a member state concerned decision on part 2 has already been submitted prior to receiving the final assessment RFI for part 1, and the part 1 RFI mandates a protocol amendment with implications for part 2, how should the part 2 changes be handled given that a part 2 decision has already been provided? Mari?
Yes, unfortunately, currently there's no other option when this happens than to submit a separate modification for part 2. If it is a substantial modification to part 2, it must be submitted as a substantial modification to part 2 after the conclusion on the initial application. And this is necessary, among others, to make sure that it is the correct approved documents that are in part 2 of the clinical trial in CTIS, which of course also means the version of the participant information sheet that is available in the public portal. And what is guidance to ethics committees that you should keep the evaluation of part 2 open as long as possible, and if you need to submit a dummy RFI to ensure better alignment with part 1, this should be done. But misalignment can happen just due to the differences in the processes of part 1 and part 2, and also the possibility to prolong part 1, for instance, in case of clinical trials with ATMPs. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Next one. Is there any guidance regarding the use of comfort items needing to be described in CTIS, such as weighted blankets, fidget toys, and robotic devices to distract from needle pain? Marie?
Yes. So based on the information that is provided just in the question, it's my understanding that the use of these items is related to minimization of inconveniences and burden for the participant. And this is, of course, very important and significant in terms of the research ethical assessment of the clinical trial, according to CTR Article 6. I'm not sure what is meant to by description in CTIS, so now I just came with a few points that might be worth considering. Definitely the use of such comfort items should be described in the protocol, for instance, under ethical considerations related to risk, inconveniences, and benefits of the clinical trial. If these items are medical devices, they must be indicated in the cover letter, and it must be stated whether these devices are CE marked and used within the intended use of the CE marking. If the devices are not CE marked, or if they're not used within the intended use of the CE marking, then the only way they can be used in the trial is if there's a parallel performance study or clinical investigation conducted with these for these devices. Then lastly, if the participants get to keep these items, for instance, a weighted blanket, after the clinical trial is completed, then they would be considered a gift or a form of compensation for participants. And if this is the case, then they must also be described in the document regarding compensation for trial participants on pay attention that there are special requirements for clinical trials with vulnerable populations in terms of compensation. And this is described in the Q&A document for CTR question 9.1. And related to this information regarding the medical devices in clinical trials, you can also find some guidance in the Q&A question 112 or this Q&A document on the interface between CTR and the IVDR. Thank you.
Thank you. Next one. Marketing authorization application fillings can trigger inspections, sometimes even years after end of trial. Are these inspection reports also expected to be submitted in CTIS? Victor?
Yeah, so the short answer is yes. Article 53 of the clinical trial regulation states that all inspection reports of the third country authorities concerning a particular clinical trial should be notified via CTIS to the member states concerned. And this is irrespective of the timing of the third-party inspection in relation to the life cycle of the clinical trial. So I think this clarifies the question. Thank you.
Thank you. Next one. Third country inspection reports often contain personal data on third country site staff and inspectors. Should those reports be redacted for those personal data, or is this information needed by the authorities for the assessment of the inspection report? Justifiable need. Victor?
Yes, so the third country inspectorate inspection documents, which can be the inspection report and any related documents, are not in scope for publication via the public portal. And as explained by the Q&A guidance document on the protection of commercial confidential information and personal data while using CTIS, in documents that are not subject to publication, the principles of data minimization should be followed when providing personal data. And it is therefore safe to assume that the personal data mentioned in the documents by your question can be redacted prior to uploading to the document in CTIS. And if indeed that information will be needed for the assessment, the member states concerned have the right to ask for it and justify their need. Thank you.
Thank you. Next one. Is there any guidance regarding satellite sites and their inclusion in CTIS? If participants go to another location for an MRI, but no other study actives happen at this location, no recruitment or other protocol-specified activities, would this location need to be provided in CTIS? Frederick?
Yes, as mentioned before, there is no guidance regarding satellite sites at the moment. It depends on national regulations and other things. So for the MRI, please mention this location in the site suitability form of the site itself. It is if it is a MRI which is study specific.
Thank you. Next one. Under one institution, there are different locations, OMS, log ID, for adults and adolescents. There is one principal investigator for both locations. How this site should be listed in CTIS, both locations or only one? If both locations are listed in CTIS, institution and principal investigator will be mentioned twice for each location. Frederick?
Yes, also answered almost the same question before, but yeah, it's highly recommended to enter it somewhere. So like in the cover letter or somewhere to explain why there can be the same PI for two locations. Yes, and the other thing is same as before, depends on national regulations and how, yeah, what it will look like. So it's no other answer for the moment.
Thank you. Next one. Can you please give us an update of the reporting feature planned for CTIS, where sponsors can generate a reporting listing all submissions, documents submitted, including versions and dates, and which had been approved and when? Babis?
Yes, Teresa, I think we saw like a similar question like in the very beginning about whether the users will be able to download a report with all the documents and the versions. I think this is like just like the feature, like a part of the download workstream. It is part of the roadmap, and we will be having improvements on this functionality incrementally released during the 2026. I do not have like a specific date for that, but we'll be having improvements on the download functionality in the upcoming year.
Thank you. Next one. As stated in the most recent issue of the Clinical Trials Highlights in October 2025, a new safety model is scheduled for launch in the first half of 2026, with the aim of simplifying the ASR. Please advise us to whether there are any details yet about what will change for the sponsor. Babis?
Yes, this question regards indeed like a new module, the ASR module. Its release, its deployment is expected around mid-2026, June, July, I'm not sure exactly for the month. There is also like a change management plan regarding this deployment. And according to that, there will be dedicated events to present this functionality, like the bite-sized talks. And also be sure that like relevant content will be included in the training material, the sponsor handbook. And for sure, also we will use like our communication channels, like the newsletter, to reach to the whole user community and disseminate the information before, of course, like the release of the functionality.
Thank you. Next one. Based on the AXMP recommendation from 30th of October, where authorized AXMPs and available use of unauthorized may be acceptable, is shortage on EU market considered justifiable reason to use a US registered product with the same active substance? Is, in this case, for EVMBD, CTIS registration expected? Victor?
Yes, so this is linked with the previous question on roughly the same topic. And yes, to address the first point, the last point of the question, it needs to be registered in CTIS. This is seen as an unauthorized AXMP. And to the first point of the question, indeed, if the EU product is unavailable to be used from the EU market, then yeah, a shortage situation would qualify as a case for when an unauthorized AXMP from a different region can be used. Of course, this needs to be explained in the submission, and it will be also a matter of assessment by the member states concerned. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a plan for CTIS to support API integration with sponsors' internal CTMS, ETMF systems to minimize manual data entry and ensure data consistency? Babis?
There is no such plan in the short term. We have received messages from users about this, but at least for the near future, there is no such plan for that functionality.
Thank you. And as we're getting closer to the end of the event, we're going to take the last question of today's session. Can we submit a substantial modification part 1 and 2 at the same time as the AM addition of a member state? The table in Chapter 4 on page 103 of the sponsor handbook is limited to ongoing evaluations. If this is not yet possible, could it be enabled? Parallel AM and SM submissions would serve to speed up trial conduct. Frederick?
Yeah, there's a short answer also because there's no possibility to, or there has to be a conclusion for the last substantial modification for part 1 before you can submit an additional member state, because part 1 can't be changed during at member state process. So.
Thank you. So, thank you for attending the session of the CTIS Walk-in Clinic. The post-event survey is now open so that you can share your satisfaction with the events. You can provide your feedback in Slido using the hashtag Clinic252. Our recording will be available on the EMA website of the events. The questions will be used as input to EMA training and support materials. We hope you enjoyed this event and we look forward to hearing your feedback on the post-event survey.